Is it indeed tricking if you've got it?
Very insightful question.
Man, y'all out here starting this $500 date, running dudes out the cipher. All these guys got to
Pay like you weigh.
Yeah,
Man.
Some dudes in here was doing good, then you up the price. Like he was cool in his $200 chair. You just priced him out for no reason. Like,
Shit, we wasn't even thinking about.
yeah.
Thinking about like, damn.
Now all of a sudden these chicks who was cool with Applebee's got standards. Thanks to y'all asses.
It ain't Friday no more.
For real.
Y'all gotta dial that back, yo.
Well, let me say this, because for full clarity, and I said this a few times, but I never said you had to spend $500. I never said that was a requirement. It was asked of me what I would do if I'm going on a date. And I broke it down, like if you're in New York City, right, you go to, I would say STK, but shout out to my guy Don Poole, we was just with him. So if you go to Brooklyn Chop House, right,
Yeah, shout
which is
Don
a
Poole.
restaurant that I would like to support more than STK. You go to Brooklyn Chop House, you having a nice, dinner. You might order some appetizers, you order a couple of drinks, you got to pay for parking. That alone is probably $250, $300. Like just on that, right? And then
Uber.
I'm just saying, as far as like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, then you might want to go to a hookah lounge afterwards. So it's not inconceivable that you're going to spend $500 on it.
I think the average is $350.
Yeah, even that. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's still kind of in that range though, right?
Yeah.
Like it could go.
That ain't Applebee's.
That ain't Applebee's.
Definitely
No,
ain't
it really
Applebee's.
ain't. See, I think the issue, I think the problem when you threw that out there is you never said you had to spend $500. But you also never told the women that, you never said that to the girls. You never said to the ladies, hey, fellas don't have to spend $500 on you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where in life it's very important to use common sense.
Sense ain't never been common. Sense ain't never been common. You just tossed that grenade out there and had all these other brothers jumping on it like.
But it depends on what women we talking about too, though. You know what I mean? If they ain't,
They
what's
never
this,
consider
velvet?
that part.
They that type. You're like,
Yeah.
man, you ain't.
It's also important to understand everybody's in different lanes, right? Somebody might look at 500 and be like, that's nothing. You're a billionaire, you spending, Floyd might spend $10,000 on the first date to fly a girl to Miami. And to him, that's nothing because he has it, right? So it's important to run your race, never feel threatened by anybody. But also it's important to understand that for me personally, if I'm taking a young lady, if I'm investing time in it, my time is very limited. So it's automatically a certain level of pre-qualifications that have to be checked off. You're not spending $500 for somebody that's not worth $500. So that's up to you as a man to understand that you shouldn't just be taking anybody out anyway. You're wasting your time, your energy, and your money if you are doing that. So we got to start, holding ourselves accountable and understanding that, like Kevin Samuels said, rest in peace, if somebody's a dinner scammer, then that's your fault for getting scammed. Now, the dinner scam is the whole thing. It's the whole thing.
Yeah, no, it is.
It's the whole
It
thing.
is.
So if
A lot of women I've dated told me about
if
that.
somebody's a dinner scammer,
You said you dated some?
No, I've dated women
got
who
put on. They told them.
Yeah,
about it.
after the fact.
That's
Like,
I think
that's
we
your
may
fault
have
for even getting
all-
put in that situation.
I'm not sure if there's a way around
Nah, come
a
on.
dinner scammer.
You're supposed to do enough research to understand that somebody's
Who's
only...
researching? First
Just-
of all,
just
you're
from
not
a-
taking her out if you think she's on that kind of.
First of all,
Exactly, that's
you're
my point.
you're eating what you like to eat.
Exactly.
Like if I'm eating what I like to eat, I'm going where I like to go. If I let that's prerogative. Like that's my prerogative. You're just there for company.
Yeah, what's the
It ain't
odds?
about you. It's about me.
That's what I'm saying. Like you gonna go where you like, right? So what's the odds of you having a second date if you take it to Applebee's on the first one?
I'm gonna completely answer all three of y'all.
depends on what
In
class
spin.
of woman she is.
In one spin. We just got finished talking about being accountable. A lot of things that come with accountability is knowing yourself, right? You three gentlemen know yourselves, which is why you're in the position that you're in. Most dudes, 85% of dudes do 95% of the things they do for women. AKA, they're not going where they want to go. They're going where they think the woman wants to go. They're not ordering the food they like. They're ordering the food that they think the woman wants. They're not getting the drinks that they like. They're getting the drinks that they think she likes.
That's the crazy. You know what the crazy thing about that? I learned this early on. That's the biggest turnoff for most women. If a woman goes out with you and they say, where we going? And you say, where do you want to go? That you have no backbone. Like you're not a leader. That's a red flag right away for most women. Like you're supposed to have some level of knowing what's going to happen. Like, this is where we're going, da-da-da. Now, if she's saying like, oh, I don't want to go there, then, that's reasonable. But you saying, where do you want to go?
Yeah.
You automatically, you're
just
following
gave
her
up your
lead.
power.
Even in those,
Gave up your
even in those
Exactly.
scenarios when
Doing
you're
that.
asking like what do you want to get, like some of these dudes, like what do you expect to do? Split the bill at the end of the night? Like, are you saying you got half, I got the other? Like, how does that even work? I mean,
I just thought it was automatic. Like
Yeah.
even as a kid,
As a
growing up
man.
around my moms and my grandmother, like they went out on dates and the men will come, they show chivalry, all these different things. So I learned from an early age, like, yes, it is. I'm on some stuff like it's whatever the woman wants, but it's on me to do my homework because I value the woman that I'm taking out.
Yeah.
And then there's no thing where I'm like, yo, the check coming, I'm like, all right, you gonna cash it?
you gonna dump the rest?
Like what we doing?
You're gonna send it a chink split joint.
Yeah, but then there's a whole ignorance of it too, right? Because there's men, I'm gonna say boys because they're not men in thinking, right?
Yeah.
Where they're sexually driven. So they're not
exactly what I'm
thinking
talking
straight.
about.
They're not thinking straight off the rip. They're just like, yo, this chick is bad, I'm gonna take her out, I'm gonna show her a good time, and I'm gonna get what I'm looking for at the end of the night.
And
And then when it doesn't happen, when it's not
Right.
reciprocated, they upset.
Yeah.
The expectations is off.
Yeah.
So what do you?
It's a lot of factors to this shit.
So we talked about spending the money.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about making it. All three of you guys have one thing in common. You're all fine. Okay, we can't have a lot of people
Yeah.
walking in and out like
Yeah.
can't do that. All three of you guys. A lot of what you do, from my perspective, I see the way that you're able to attract our people, right? And money's a fickle thing with a lot of us. Our relationships with money are all different. But in the black community, it's been pretty bad. I think we can agree across the board. Like we're good. We know to save it. We don't know where to spend it. Stocks and certain things feel risky to someone who may be living check to check. We send out a lot of cliches that they send a lot of cliches our way that don't really apply to us in the situations that a lot of us are in. Everybody doesn't have the stones to be an entrepreneur. Everybody doesn't have the guts to invest and bet on themselves when they don't feel they're even sure. And a lot of people don't have the discipline it takes to get sure about where they're going to, the research.
Right.
Most people aren't going to do the research. They want the sexy job. They want it to look, I put it here, I got this back, almost like a drug dealer. You guys have all had to do the research and all had to do the homework. I'm interested in how that started. Like, I'm trying to get the origins here. Like, when did you discover that your relationship with money or your relationship with product and quality was going to be different than the dude standing next to you?
Yeah. Okay.
You want to start? Who wants? I mean, all right, so you asking when the relationship with money changed?
Please.
I mean, for me, just growing up, like, I grew up a lot different than a lot of my friends as far as my dad was always an entrepreneur his whole life. And, his background, like, he grew up in, like, Nation of Islam. So they was real big on entrepreneurship, do for self, all that
Ownership,
stuff.
so-
That stuff that, he always taught me that at a young age. So that was something that I was always, like, kind of had in my mind. Like, don't work for anybody. Like, work for yourself. Like, build your own community, self-reliant, stuff like that. That was something, like, he was real big on teaching me. So I always had that entrepreneurship mindset out the gate, when most people don't think like that. Most people just think just to try to get a job, right? And then from there, I always knew, like, all right, this is something that, is interesting to me as far as how to make money and how to do it, like, in a business standpoint, and then just watching films. Like, I used to always watch films, Wall Street, like, original Wall Street, Barbarians at the Gate, like, all of these films about, like, white guys on Wall Street, because it was just fascinating to me how they could just make so much money. And it didn't look like they was really doing too much. Like, what I mean? Just moving one thing from over here to over here, pushing paper and stuff like that, and they making millions and millions of dollars and just living a life that was just crazy. Penthouses in Manhattan and everything like that. So that was just fascinating me at an early age. So I understood, like, okay, like, what are they doing? Investing. So then you start to read books like, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read that when I was like 18 years old. And that changed my whole thinking. That changed my life. Because then I started to understand, okay, this is how it actually works. Like, I got, like, the idea from my dad, and then I got, like, the concept from watching movies, and then reading those books. That kind of gave me the real information. I'm like, okay, this is actually how you invest. This is the difference between the asset and liability and setting up a corporation.
And then you started putting it into action.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how it all started for me.
Yeah, I think just growing up, not having it, you know what I'm saying, and not, your parents not having it, and you got to figure out how to get it. So I just remember, even when I was young, like when I was trying to get like a Game Boy, and I was in 3rd grade, and I was like, my parents like, we ain't got it. And I just save up my lunch money, be like, yo, here's $40. I saved up 3 months of lunch money. Just having that mindset, I was like, I got to do it. So even when I had to get my first car, it was like, I worked all summer to save up. Yo, I'm gonna buy this car. My parents like, where you get the money? I've been saving it. So I always had that mindset, was like, I'm gonna have to get it on my own. Because my parents don't come from a background where they're financially educated. They're from Jamaica. You know what I'm saying? So like, I had friends who knew things about finance and were, you know, astute in it, but I was like, how am I do it? So reading books helped me. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was definitely one of them.
Yes.
Who Moved My Cheese was a big one for me, but hip hop was one. Like I remember Jay saying like, life's like a treadmill, niggas running in place, getting nowhere fast, a whole year done passed. I was like, oh, I'm sitting there like, damn, what am I gonna do with my life? Like, I remember just wanting to make 6 figures. Like, that was my goal. I just gotta make 6 figures. Like, I don't care how much it is, I just gotta make it. So I was a senior in high school, and I went to my gym teacher. He was cool as shit. I'm like, yo, how much you make, man? And he told me 140,000. I was like, what? Like, I said, you make 140,000? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm in my head, I'm like, you make more than my dad. Like, how? And so he was telling me his base salary is 120. He started coaching sports that like nobody really cared about at our school. Like, our school was just basketball, track, maybe football. He was like the soccer coach. That was 9,000 a season. He was the bowling coach. It's like 3 people who bowled in the whole school. That's like 5,000 for the season. And he was the golf coach. And this is before Tiger. So they like 1 kid on the team, but he getting 5 bands for it every season. I'm
He had
like,
a budget
man,
for all of those
this
sports.
is smart. Like he really figured this out. I'm like, 140, bet I'm gonna be a gym teacher. I'm gonna get 140,000. And like, that was my thing. I was like, yeah, all right, bet. So I was doing that. Then I started reading more. I started learning. Like, I remember buying Business Week for the first time. I was probably like 22, 23, reading the whole thing. And then I was like, yo, I gotta invest in stocks. Like, what are stocks? So I started teaching myself that. Then I started investing. I got a Scott Trade account. I don't even exist anymore. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna invest in these companies. I'm like, all right, this is cool. I made some money. And then 2008 came and I was like, wait.
Market crash.
I'm like, I've lost all my money. So I started pulling out the money before I could lose it all. It was a valuable lesson learned because I was investing in Apple right before the iPhone. You see what I'm saying? So I was like,
You rich.
yeah, bro. I was like, but you gotta go through that. Like, you gotta go through that
Yeah.
to understand, like, you gotta have discipline, you gotta have patience, and you gotta have a long-term vision. And so all those things just prepare you for the next thing. So that's where it started, man. It was just like reading, trying to figure it out, surrounding myself with people, right? Like, this is my financial advisor. Surrounding yourself with people who have the knowledge and then going and seeking it for yourself.
So you were an educator
Yeah,
and you were a financial advisor. And y'all,
that's financial literacy right there.
It's hot for trapper turn smack rapper. Only smack rapper that you know is smack rappers. Got bars I can hang with the backpackers. Trap star, I don't hang with the backpackers. I'm in the hood with the work you heard. Making fiends leave earth you heard. Got your baby mama thirst you heard. Feel the flow, nigga, throw it in reverse. This the wave you need to surf you heard.